Good afternoon. Hello. 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 Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started. I'm Mark Shovers, the co-chair of the Jewish Federation of Madison's Community Relations Committee, proudly serving with my friend and fellow co-chair Jeremy Tunis. I'd like to welcome all of you to this very special community forum sponsored by JFM and the CRC, featuring our esteemed guest, Gil Hoffman, who's the executive director of Honest Reporting. We're very honored to have you here with us today in Madison, Gil, and thank you for coming. Before I introduce Gil, I'd like to thank Stephanie Kushner and Temple Bethel for graciously offering to host this event. Stephanie, thank you so much for all your help in organizing the logistics and planning. I'd also like to thank Shoshana Prager, staff of Jewish Federation, Beth Schreiber, Judy Parati, and Jeremy Tunis for their help with tonight's event. Following Gil's presentation, he'll be happy to take questions. If you have a question, please write it on one of the note cards that Judy or Jeremy will be distributing. They'll be circulating among the crowd, and then they'll give the questions to me, and I'll ask them at the end of the presentation. We do have some light refreshments, so following the event, if you'd like to stay and chat about the presentation or just visit, please join us out in the entryway there, and you're more than welcome to hang out, schmooze, and nosh. Gil Hoffman is the executive director of Honest Reporting, which fights for Israel in the international mainstream and social media. He is also a lecturer on political strategy at Israel's College of Management and served for 24 years as the chief political correspondent and analyst for the Jerusalem Post, where he's now a regular columnist. Well connected to Israeli and Palestinian leaders, Gil has interviewed every major figure across the Israeli political spectrum and has been interviewed by top media on 6 continents and is a regular analyst on CNN, Al Jazeera, and other news outlets. The Alaminer website recently named him one of the top 100 people positively influencing Jewish life alongside presidents and prime ministers. Gil was raised in Chicago, graduated magna cum laude from Northwestern University School of Journalism, and served in the IDF spokesperson unit. Gil, welcome, and please come up and...
Thank you so much, Mark, for organizing this. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you to everybody for coming. Thank you to the Federation, the JCRC, and this lovely synagogue for making this all happen. It is an honor and pleasure for me to be here in Madison. Growing up in Chicago, we always looked up to Wisconsin, and I don't, now, it's not only on the map, but growing up as an observant Jew in Chicago has its challenges because the best music artists in America would come to Chicago on Friday night, and we couldn't go. And then they'd come to Madison and Milwaukee on Thursdays and Sundays. And we'd come up here, and it was like paradise. So, like, you might not realize this, but observant Jews raised in Chicago find Madison to be the funnest place on earth in a way that no other, that more than other people do. You know, we always loved coming here. So I'm so glad to be back here for the first time in a very long time. And you know, I really appreciate Mark turning to me, and the moment he said he was interested, I did everything to make sure it would happen, and including bringing you better weather. It's not always like this on regular Monday in February, no? Well, I hope that you got to enjoy the day, and people warned me, well, are you scheduling something in Wisconsin in February? You're going to freeze your tushy, and I'm glad that they're wrong. So I make a point of going not only to the big cities that Israel speakers normally go to that are oversaturated with programming like New York, Miami, and LA. I make a point of going to smaller communities too. And I've spoken in all 50 states, culminating in a talk a while back in Hawaii in a synagogue that trademarked Shaloha. And just in case, I've also spoken in what could be in future states. I've spoken in Puerto Rico, in Washington, D.C., in Panama. You never know. So I'm really happy that I could come here in Madison, where I know that people care very deeply about the future of the state of Israel. And I'm glad that I could come at a time that's such a monumental time for Israel and the Jewish people. Because other than Iran, the 7 battlefields that there have been on the military battlefield in this conflict are for the most part done, thank God. Took them long enough. But the narrative warfare, the media battlefield, is continuing. And it's very important that it succeed. It's been important that it succeed until now, because success on the media battlefield is key to the success on the military battlefield, which is a quote from, out of all people, Osama bin Laden. But it's also the key to the future. It's also the key to making things better for Jews in America. Because there's a stark contrast right now between how people are going to be remembering this war. Either this will be remembered as the war where Israel became an international pariah, like apartheid South Africa, or this will be remembered as the war where Israel defeated genocidal terrorists and an Islamic fundamentalist nuclear weapon. And if people continue to believe the lies, then it's going to be even harder for the American Jewish community. Anti-Semitism will continue to rise. Terror will continue to rise even where there is no Jew. I spoke at Utah Valley University, for instance. I don't think I had a Jew in the crowd over there. Everywhere but will continue to become more dangerous, and we Israelis won't be able to travel anywhere. You know, during Hanukkah, I wanted to take my kids somewhere fun abroad, and we kind of brainstormed together. America, that's too far. We won't have enough time. Europe, there's nowhere there to go where we'd be welcomed except Budapest, and I've heard it's really boring over there. And so I ended up taking them to a safari in Africa, figuring that the lions and the cheetahs would treat us better than the Gentiles somewhere else. You know, that they don't know we're Jews and they don't care. And if people, however, realize the truth and internalize it, then we in Israel are going to have a post-war economic boom, post-war plus post-pandemic, because remember, there was only a year between the pandemic and the war. Anti-Semitism will continue to go down in America, including on college campuses, and terror will go down as well. It's that serious a contrast. And that's why I'm glad I could be here with you over here to talk about what's been going on since October 7th and what you can do, each and every one of you, to help make things better going forward. So guess I can start using that clicker thing over here. And starts out with a little bit of me. I had a pretty fun job covering politics for the Jerusalem Post, following around presidents and prime ministers, getting to know them pretty well, getting to have a front row seat as it happens to watch history. And I could have been doing that forever, But on the side, I was doing all kinds of briefings in the foreign media. Here I am on CNN on the day that the embassy of the United States opened up in Jerusalem, and started realizing how important it is to be fighting for Israel in the media. And then I got this opportunity to join Honest Reporting, which is an organization that's been around for 25 years, but was really created for October 7th. It was started when there was this picture in the New York Times of this bloodied young man with a menacing-looking soldier on top of him. And the New York Times reported that this was a Palestinian boy who was harmed by the soldier near the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount, until his father saw the picture in the paper and said, "That's my son. His name is Tuvia. He's Jewish." And the soldier who saved his life was actually Druze, not Jewish. And while it did happen in Jerusalem, where he went into the wrong neighborhood, it did not happen anywhere near the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount, where there is no Paz gas station up there. So they got literally everything wrong. And that led to an email group where people shared incorrect headlines about Israel, and then to a website. And then when I joined, together with my boss 3.5 years ago, we decided to make it a lot more aggressive and timely and social media focused. And in those 3.5 years, we have gotten 15 Hitler and Hamas praising journalists suspended, reassigned, or fired, including 3 from the New York Times, 4 from AP, and 4 from CNN. And really made an impact. We've gotten Christiane Amanpour apologize 3 times. We've affected the Pulitzer Prize a couple times, and tried to hold the journalists accountable. And that's only become more important since October 7th. So this, if we can play the video, is a good way of summing up what my organization does.
Happy 2000!
In the year 2000, USA Today was America's largest newspaper. Time was the #1 news weekly, and each night, about 30 million Americans were watching these men.
We spent more than 3 hours a day on average listening to the radio. Social media and podcasting didn't even exist. And anti-Israel bias was prevalent in the media.
Today, the world is radically different. 53% of Americans get their news from social media. We spend 69% more time watching streaming than broadcast or cable TV. And we're spending more than 7 hours a week listening to podcasts. And anti-Israel bias has metastasized. So Honest Reporting, the world's leading pro-Israel media watchdog, has evolved.
And we're just getting started.
When print and TV were kings, we held them accountable, and we have never stopped. In the past 3 years alone, we've gotten 15 journalists fired or reassigned from leading media outlets like the New York Times, CNN, AP, Reuters, and the Washington Post. And we've driven countless corrections and retractions.
As the media landscape radically transformed from mass media to social media,
We've evolved.
And made educating the public through social media central to what we do.
to date, Honest Reporting has delivered almost 500 million social media impressions, with 60% of our audience being millennials and Gen Z. And our work has made an impact.
We've exposed Hamas-affiliated photographers, facilitated an Emmy-nominated segment on CNN, which drew attention to Israeli victims of October 7th, and built a dynamic, interactive map of Hamas's tunnels of terror.
And now, we're creating artificial intelligence tools to help people detect bias and fight back. Our custom-built AI tool continuously scans more than 100 top media outlets and flags anti-Israel bias. In a world fighting an army of Goliaths, we're David, except now, AI is our 21st century slingshot. The world is radically different from 25 years ago. and the world will be radically different 25 years from now. With your help, we will evolve with the times to ensure the world only hears honest reporting. Thank you for making it happen.
So how does it feel to be David fighting an army of Goliaths? Are you intimidated? Or are you ready for continuing the challenge? You know, I myself, I don't look at this as some huge mountain that can't be overcome. Obviously, there are more anti-Israel people on the internet than there are pro-Israel people. Obviously, we're outnumbered in social media, especially on TikTok. But that's not a reason to not move ahead with the challenge. It's a reason to keep on fighting and celebrating incremental progress. That's what we do. Every day, we have some kind of success when we are facing incorrect reports that there are about Israel. We are not afraid to rise to that challenge. And even though it's changed a lot over time. Do you remember way back when you had to write letters to the editor on a typewriter? And you'd use whiteout, and you'd put the letter in an envelope, and then put it in a box, and hope that a pigeon would take it to a newsroom basement where an intern would then bring it up to an editor smoking a cigar who would decide whether to put it on page 12 or page 13 in the paper with no context. Well, nowadays it's a little different. Nowadays, what we do is we have an AI tool. We've taught it the 8 categories of media bias that our humans have been looking for 25 years. And it flags them the moment an article goes online. And then we can decide whether to shame them on social media for getting it wrong, write some kind of long-form article to teach the world, or to actually get it changed quietly behind the scenes, which is what we end up doing relatively often. Nowadays we can get things changed within minutes of when something goes online. There are more videos coming up, if you can. And make an impact immediately that way. And I have a very small staff, but we have people all over the world who are constantly sending us stuff that they see. And the next screen over here is an example. It's a video. It's only 6 seconds long. And you'll see why people flagged it to us right away. No. Please work. Sometimes if you click the one on the right, it's easier than the one on the left. And if it doesn't work, I will tell you what they say in the 6 seconds. Okay. No worries. So this is John Vauss. He is one of the top anchors of CNN International. And he, on October 10th, 3 days into the war, said on TV with people looking at him all around the world, there are 9 million Palestinians in Gaza who are now being pummeled by the Israeli Air Force in one of the most densely populated areas on earth. How many Palestinians live in Gaza? Right, 2 million. CNN was off by only 7 million people. And is Gaza one of the most densely populated areas on earth? Not even close. The most densely populated areas on Earth are Hong Kong, Manila, cities in India, New York, Miami, LA, but nowhere in Gaza. And this happens on a daily basis, that they're getting things wrong. To put Gaza into perspective, I've been there 4 times. My first time in Gaza was as an 18-year-old kid on a gap year program between high school and college. And one of the perks of this program was that they took us to a resort called the Palm Beach Hotel, right there on the beach in Gaza, long before anybody dreamed of putting a Riviera over there. And I remember thinking about how much potential it had. My second time in Gaza was as a journalist. I covered politics for the Jerusalem Post for a quarter century. I went wherever the politicians went, and there was a group of left-wing dovish politicians who went to Gaza to meet with the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat. And I remember it like it was yesterday, because on the way in, they made us leave our cell phones, because Israel had used cell phones as remote controls to kill terrorists. And on the way out, I left my phone there by mistake. And an Israeli general and a Palestinian general who hadn't met in months met that day to get back my phone. And I tell this story to high school kids, and they react with horror. You left your phone in Gaza? I left my phone in the bathroom once, and I haven't recovered from that. I also remember it like it was yesterday, because halfway through the meeting, Arafat kicked the journalists out to meet alone with the politicians, and the New York Times lady didn't leave. And I remember as I'm going out the door, I see she was pretending to be the daughter of one of the members of Knesset. I saw Arafat giving her a big kiss on the forehead. And I remember losing a little respect for the New York Times already then. My third time in Gaza was as a soldier. I served in a combat unit in the Army. And when I started my reserve duty, I switched over to the spokesman's unit, to Dover Tzahal. And I did that because I wanted to use my experience and my skills as a journalist to help Israel against its enemies. But I didn't get called up for Israel against its enemies. I got called up for the withdrawal from Gaza, what was called the Hitnatkud. And my job was to take around the VIP journalists and show them the tremendous sacrifices that Israel was making for peace, right? And I took around the journalists from the New York Times together with a journalist from Fox. Don't worry, they got along. They were even married to each other, and still are to this day. Opposites attract sometimes, but don't try this at home. And I remember how they talked about how Gaza could become the Singapore of the Mediterranean. And maybe it could have. But soon afterward, the Hamas overthrew the rightful Palestinian leadership in Gaza. Don't let anybody tell you they took power in an election. They literally took the people in power and threw them off the top of buildings to the floor. They literally overthrew them. That's how they took power. And perhaps, though, there was still some hope for the people of Gaza, maybe one day having leadership that would serve them better until October 7th. I met with Netanyahu's national security advisor on Friday, October 6th at 2 p.m. because I had a speaking tour coming up, and when I go on a speaking tour, I tend to meet with very serious people who will tell me things from behind the scenes that I could tell the people I meet with in America, even the ones who know everything. And I remember I met with Netanyahu's national security advisor. We went through all the different security threats that Israel was facing. And when he got to Hamas, the word that he used, the national security advisor of Netanyahu, on Friday, October 6th at 2 p.m., the word that he used to describe Hamas was restrained. He said, look, they haven't joined the last 3 wars between Israel and Islamic Jihad, kind of hinted that they might be getting out of the terror business. What was he working on at the time? He was working on doubling the amount of Gazan workers coming into Israel as part of an agreement he was negotiating with Saudi Arabia. And so he said that's what Hamas cares about, getting more workers into Israel. Well, boy, was he wrong. And that's why it bothers me so much when people make this conflict look like Israel is some Goliath and its enemies are the underdog, when the truth is the other side prepared for this war day in and day out for 17 years since Hamas took power, with all the money from around the world flowing in that was supposed to help the Palestinian people, and they misused to build tunnels and hurt our people. They prepared for that long, while Israel prepared for not at all. Taken completely by surprise, coming completely from behind. That's the truth. And so I felt I had to understand better what was going on in Gaza and come back again. And so I called up my cousin, who was the deputy commander of the forces in southern Gaza, and I asked him, told him I've got another speaking tour coming up. This was February 24. Do you have any stories I could tell the people that I'm going to meet with on this trip? And he says to me, well, why do you want stories from me? Why don't you just come in and see for yourself? Just ask the right person at the IDF. So I called up the right person at the IDF, and I asked to come into Gaza, and he said, no. No, you can't come into Gaza. And I kind of begged him. I said, I'm not worried about my safety. I'm going to a much more dangerous place for Jews. I'm going to UC Berkeley. And they still didn't let me in. And I called up my cousin all dejected. They're not letting me in. And then he gave me the ultimate Israeli response of, screw them, they won't know. And before you know it, I was on a tour on a Jeep throughout Gaza. And I got to see with my own eyes how 80% of the homes in Gaza had some kind of terror infrastructure. Nearly 100% of the schools, the hospitals, the playgrounds, the mosques, and the cemeteries. It takes time to remove all that. I wish we could have had a 6-day war. We're good at those, right? Unfortunately, we needed to have a long war. I don't know as long as it did, but we needed to have a long war in order to get rid of that terror infrastructure for the good of the people of Israel, the people of Gaza, and the people of the region. But how could we have a long war? How could we do this in the reality of the world today? What's happened in the past is that media outlets put pressure on world leaders who put pressure on Israel to end the war prematurely without any accomplishments. We could not let that happen after October 7th. We had to retaliate in a serious kind of way in order to ensure not only the terror would be defeated by us, but also in countries around the world. And I believe that one of the reasons why the war was able to go on longer and have what there unfortunately needed to be is because throughout this war, people have been questioning the media. That goes back to just 10 days into the war. Do you remember how they started reporting that we had bombed a hospital, killing exactly 500 people in Gaza in the hospital? They already knew a few minutes after it happened that there were not only that there were exactly 500 people, but that 350 of the 500 were women, and then another 350 of the 500 were children. Hamas math is different than other math. And even though there had been a building that came down around the same time in Miami in a place called Surfside, where it took them a month to find out how many people were there. But the world media parroted what Hamas had told them, and people believed it around the world until people like you started questioning it. And thankfully, the IDF provided solid proof that we didn't do it, that it was an errant rocket fired from the cemetery next to the hospital, landing in the parking lot, killing about 20 people, nowhere, which is still a tragedy, but nowhere near 500. So let's see what we have in this room. How many of you have posted something pro-Israel since October 7th, 2023? Thank you so much. You might have lost some friends doing that. So thank you for what you've done. Let's see what we have. How many of you are on Facebook? Almost all of you. How many of you are on Instagram? More than half. How many of you are on X, formerly known as Twitter? About 4. Maybe more used to be, I don't know. How many of you are on Telegram? Only me and the Israel Shaliach and Hamas. Okay, and how many of you are on Snapchat? Only the 3 youngest people in the room. Okay, no. And how many of you are on TikTok? Why only 5 people on TikTok? It's very. I'm getting there. But TikTok is a very important mitzvah. It said in this week's Torah portion, Midvar Sheker TikTok. So it's wherever we have an important fight. And as Jeremy said, LinkedIn. Okay, about more than half of you on LinkedIn. That's where Jews have their majority, maybe a little safer space. So I appreciate what you all have done in fighting for Israel in this war. You are digital warriors. Are there any of you not on any of them? Wow. How do you see your grandchildren? WhatsApp does not count as social media. Thank God you can write privately over there. But how do you know who they're dating? That's what social media is for, to troll your children and grandchildren. And so, yeah, good luck. So, except for those 7 people who have lives, who've raised their hands, we are all soldiers on that media battlefield. And it's not easy, but I truly believe that we've been effective and that it's made a difference. And my organization has done its part too. So here, about a month into the war, we started questioning, how did these photographers get there so early in order to photograph the tank of Commander Omer Nutra of Long Island that morning? Were they tipped off by Hamas? Were they embedded? How were there 14 photographers who posted pictures on their Instagram from rooftops of the sunset that morning, who knew to be on Gaza rooftops at 6:20 in the morning on that day? That doesn't happen on a normal day. And then we started looking into who these photographers are. Remember, Israel, rightly or wrongly, did not let journalists into Gaza in this war. And so there was no Daniel Pearl or Edward R. Murrow, any big-time foreign correspondent reporting from Gaza during this war. They reported from Israel. But from Gaza, it was ordinary Gazans with cell phones who knew that their lives depended on Hamas. And they needed to be giving the narrative that Hamas wanted them to give. And so this picture was the picture of the year in Reuters in 2023. It was taken by a man named Mohammed Faik Abu Mostafa, who the box next to it, which I don't think will work, showed in video that he posted live, on Instagram on the afternoon of October 7th, where he told his friends in Gaza, I've been all day in a settlement called Sderot. You got to come here. We've been taking out the men. We've been doing whatever we want to do with the women. And we've been killing the dogs. And encouraging people to do what he had been doing. We were worried that this scumbag would win the Pulitzer Prize. And in fact, where he worked at Reuters, they did win the Pulitzer Prize for international photography. But their winning bid had no photos from October 7th. And they were asked, was that a slow news day? Why did you not include any pictures from that day? And they said, oh, there's this annoying media watchdog called Honest Reporting, and they've been questioning the physical and ethical boundaries that we crossed that day, and we didn't want to mar our winning bid. Now, that same tank that's right over there was also photographed by a fellow who worked for AP and CNN named Hassan Asliach. And I got a call at 6 o'clock in the morning from one of those media outlets. Somebody calling me from his wife's phone saying, I work with this guy. You should check him out. He's a little creepy. And by the end of the day, we found him being kissed by Yahya Sinwar. And he was very much a terror operative for Hamas in this war. And he is no longer with us. So that's maybe how they knew how to be there so early on that day. And that's why it's good that there are people who are asking these questions. And then there's Christiane Amanpour, one of the top journalists in the world.
People who start
I'll
to
talk over
to
her for a little bit till we get to halfway through. It's okay. You can keep on playing her.
will find that it will
This
take
is the day
a
that
long time
hostages
for them
were
to
released,
recover
the last hostages,
physically, but also
live
mentally.
ones from Gaza.
It's been a terrible, terrible 2
Listen.
years for them, because not only are they there, they're probably being treated better than the average Gazan, because they are the
Stop there.
pawns and the chips that Hamas.
Did you hear what she said? How the hostages released, the Israeli hostages, were probably treated better than the average Gazan. She said, yep, held in terror tunnels underground, sexually abused every single day, as Arbel Yehud was, held in chains, tortured, treated better than the average Gazan. She had to apologize because we pointed this out. How does that work? She didn't want to apologize. How did it happen? Well, once we had this clip ready to go, which was sent us by an alert person who saw it on TV. They told us, check out what she just said. And when we made the video clip, before it was even online, I sent it to the foreign minister of Israel, who saw my message an hour before Shabbat on a Friday and responded in under a minute with one word, kalba. How's your Hebrew? I can't really say it in a synagogue. He called her a bitch. And then he said, we'll deal with it immediately. And apparently they called the president of CNN, and she had to apologize. Now, it's much more of a challenge, actually, to deal with more independent journalists and podcasters. Because when Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson say something offensive and completely factually incorrect, who are we going to call? Qatar? So the challenge is much greater than it's ever been before. And that's why we have to do what we can on social media. Because we're not CNN, but we can reach a lot of people with social media. And when I joined in 2022, we had 4 million people see our content, and now we're up to 300 million. And 60% of them are millennials and Gen Z, meaning younger than me. And that's really important. 2/3 of them aren't followers in any way. That's the young people are the people we need to reach. And we can reach out to them because they're impressionable. The views since October 7th, people above 65 is the top line. It's been rather consistent in their views about Israel and the Palestinians. Whereas the bottom line is the people 18 to 24 you see it's a jagged line. They go up and down, which means that they change their minds all the time. This poll over here is the Harvard-Harris poll. They have been asking they've been asking ordinary Americans since October 7th every month, are you more pro-Israel or are you more pro, not Palestine, Hamas? And so right now, 72% say they are more pro-Israel and 28% more pro-Hamas among Americans. Now let's go back to that breakdown of the age groups. So among people 65 and older, 88% favor Israel over Hamas. And 6 months ago, it was even 93%. But among the people 18 to 24, right now it's only 55% favor us over Hamas. And 6 months ago, it was actually 51 to 49 the other way. Meaning, more than half of the young people in America were saying that they are in favor of going to dance festivals and murdering, raping, and killing as many people as possible if they know what they're talking about, which they don't. This is scary. But at least that other slide shows that we can make an impact, that they're at least changing their mind depending on what they see on social media. And that's why we have to be reaching out to them every single day. You know, we're 8 hours ahead. So we already try to think, okay, what are they going to be talking about today? And give them tools to deal with. And making them a video of no longer than a minute with someone they could relate to and try to educate them. I sure hope this one will work. If you could try to click on the lady in the stripes, yes.
Headlines are running wild saying that the IDF has confirmed that 70,000 Gazans were killed in the Israel-Hamas war. It's important to note that the IDF has not officially confirmed this and hasn't released any updated data, but that clearly doesn't matter to the internet. Because for 2 years, Israel's been saying Hamas's death toll can't be trusted, but this number, claimed by Hamas and now acknowledged by an IDF official, would prove exactly the opposite. Except it isn't the gotcha they think it is. Because while the number was debated, so was the breakdown. Since 2024, Israeli officials have been citing a civilian to combatant ratio of 1.5 or 2 to 1.
Fewer than 2 to 1 ratio of civilians to Hamas terrorists killed.
They've also cited 25,000 combatants killed, and with a ratio of 2 to 1, that implies about 70,000 deaths total. The problem with the number stated by Hamas and echoed by the media was that it never distinguished between terrorists and civilians. It claimed that 70% of the dead were women and children, which Hamas's own May 2024 data disproved, when it showed that 52% of Gaza's fatalities were adult men. It didn't account for the thousands of civilians killed by Hamas and Islamic Jihad from failed rockets and brutal attacks against civilians. And it included natural deaths that were not war-related. Sorry to disappoint the anti-Israel fanatics that foamed at the mouth the moment they caught wind of this story, but it's just not new news, and it doesn't prove what you think it does. What the breakdown of that number proves is that there was no genocide, Israel was in fact targeting terrorists, not civilians, and Hamas intentionally omitted all of that to manipulate public perception and stoke hatred against Israel. And over 2 years later, the media is still sharing what Hamas says, no questions asked. So share this to correct what the media is getting wrong.
So these kinds of videos can really make all the difference in the world. And then also infographics and memes. The one in the middle says construction of a bomb shelter, $30,000. Bomb shelters in Gaza, 0. Construction of a tunnel, $3 million. And tunnels in Gaza, 400 miles. So putting this stark contrast in their heads so they can really understand it better. The other video over here we won't play, but that's our video about Jeffrey Epstein. Because people are talking about that, we need to be where people are. So media outlets around the world tried to make it look like Jeffrey Epstein had this relationship with Israel. He did not. He wrote, "I hate Israel." A lot. He wrote, "I hate Israel," a lot. And so it's nice try to attach evil to us. It didn't work. Tried to put the president of Israel in a picture with him using stupid AI that was easily caught. So they'll try anything against us. And one quick thing. About 3 years ago, I gave a talk in New York City on a Friday night at a synagogue, and afterward somebody called us up and said, we want to give you $750,000. And I thought, wow, I got somebody to give us $750,000? And it turned out he was representing the estate of Jeffrey Epstein, and we turned it down. Good idea? Did we do the right thing? Okay, so we can go on. By the way, you notice that in our videos,
Headlines are running wild.
they're all women. And that's because there was an actual scientific study that found that men prefer to look at women, believe it or not. And also the same study found that women also prefer to look at women. Think about it. So now, I was in a video once. I don't think I'll play it here, but it was after we caught the bureau chief of Reuters in Lebanon saying that they take very seriously what media watchdogs are doing. Every time they broadcast something or every time they print an article, they think, wait, we're being watched. And that's really important.
Prove that.
We're getting to how we have to be using technology in order to win this. People are saying, why is this war going on for so long? And so we did an interactive map of the tunnels in Gaza for people to understand that better. Yeah, how complicated warfare can be if there are tunnels underneath mosques and schools. You can go to tunnels.honestreporting.com and see that. And we're going to make that bigger. And then we've also been having to react to this being the generation of AI. So 61% of adults have used AI platforms in the past year. That's a very big change. It's up 40% from the year before. So we need to be ready. 36% of American adults use it at least every week, and the rest don't realize that they're using it. You know, every time you Google something nowadays, it's using AI. So if this is where people are getting their news, then we have to be ready. And that's why not only are we using an AI tool to monitor and filter the media that I mentioned before, but also we're being trained by the Gemini team at Google for how to write our content in a way that Gemini will use us as a source. So, and not just use Al Jazeera and Reddit and Wikipedia. We got to be where people are getting their information. Also using facial recognition, any technology we can to be ahead of the game. Bias Breaker is our tool. And we'll be releasing it to the media so they can check their stories before they publish them and see if they're biased. And that's more important than ever, and we'll release it to the public as well. Instead of having 5 editors, we'll have a digital army of 5 million people. And now we're getting to the part you've all been waiting for of what you can do. So we'll start with AI, and then I'll get to the social media and print. It says at the top here, what do Jews say? I. Here's how you can improve your AI. Well, first of all, you got to be arguing with it when it gets things wrong. And it gets things wrong all the time. It doesn't know. It's an aggregate of information. It doesn't think. Try asking your AI how many R's there are in strawberry. It'll say 2. Shh, there's more than 2. But it just gets its information. And so we're Jews are an argumentative people. We shouldn't be afraid to argue with our AI. You know, Abraham, the first Jew, argued with God, and we're afraid to argue with Grok. So we have to be correcting the different AI platforms when they get things wrong. So be aware of how the systems operate, how they get their information, not just what's wrong, but how it's biased. Ask it for source diversity. Say, and give it instructions like, what do multiple sources across the political spectrum say about that? And when it tells you its source, then say, from now on, don't use the New York Times or the United Nations as sources about information about the Middle East. They are not reputable sources. Use the Jerusalem Post and Honest Reporting, and your Jewish Federation website over here in Madison. And that can all help make things better. Give it stronger evidence, and that will actually help it be used by others as well. Understand, unlike social media, AI platforms do not yet make money. So the social media platforms have an interest in keeping you in their comfort zone, because that will keep you online where you are, and the longer you're there, the more money they make. That's different with AI. AI is still being built, and you can still have an impact on it. You can be part of educating it like you educate a child. And when it comes to social media, so you should also engage there. What does that mean? Well, if you see something on your Facebook or your Instagram that's pro-Israel and you like it, share it on WhatsApp. Because WhatsApp is owned by the same people who own Facebook and Instagram. And it likes it when you do that, the algorithm. And if you see a video that you like, play it until the end, because nobody does that. And that'll shock the algorithm and think this must be something that more people would want to see. You don't have to actually watch it until the end. It won't know. Go make coffee. It's okay. But let it play until the end. And if there's a picture that's anti-Israel, but you want people to know about it, take a screenshot. Don't click share. It won't know about the screenshot, and share the screenshot instead. That all helps with social media. Now let's get to print for the people that are a little bit less tech savvy. How many people have canceled a subscription to a media outlet for being anti-Israel? I see 3, 4, 5, 6 hands. Okay, well, with all due respect, I think all 6 of you are wrong. I know that you're trying to get your revenge. You think by taking away the $100, you're making a difference. You're not. The way to get your revenge is to buy their newspaper and read it. And when they get things wrong, highlight it on social media. And if you don't have 100,000 followers on social media, well, we do. Send it to us. We have 100,000 followers on 3 different platforms. And or we can call up the media outlet and we can get it changed or fixed, or at least keep them on their toes. Regain some deterrence on the media battlefield. Our email address is action@honestreporting.com. You've been very polite, and many of you are not on your phone. I'm used to talking to birthright kids. You know, I'm used to talking to college students. They're on their phone the whole time, and it's not considered impolite anymore. So I teach college, and they're on their phone. I'm not offended. Took some time to get used to that. But whereas my daughter at home, I do get offended. But you're allowed to take out your phone and go to your favorite social media platform and find Honest Reporting and click like or follow on it over there. Honest Reporting is one word. We're cool that way. And if you're not into social media at all, just go to HonestReporting.com and click subscribe. At least you can get our content on email. And even better than that, when you go click on subscribe, put in the email address of your children or grandchildren without asking their permission. That'll help too. If you this is an event of the Jewish Federation, please continue supporting your Jewish Federation. And if you can help us out a little bit too, there's a QR code up there and on the flyers that have been passed out. We're a very small organization. Every little bit helps. But my last advice to you, and then I'll take questions that you've been writing on these cards very actively, is be a mensch. Because if you're a good person, then people trust you as a source of information. And before you know it, more and more people will be informed. Your likers of your likers and your followers of your followers, and more of them will be getting honest reporting. Thank you very much. So Mark is going to read your questions on stage, and we'll have a nice conversation up here.
Thank you very much, Gil. That was terrific and very informative. I have some questions here that people have submitted in advance.
You got to keep it right next to your mouth.
Okay, is that better? Yes. Okay. We have some questions that people have submitted already, and Jeremy and Judy have been collecting questions also. So I'll start with some of the ones that have been pre-submitted. Before October 7th, it seemed as if the Saudis were moving toward joining the Abraham Accords in exchange for some sort of Israeli commitment to a two-state solution. Israel's current government rejects a two-state solution, and recently the Saudi government has turned away from the accords and moved closer to Qatar and Turkey. Do you see a realistic path for Saudi-Israeli normalization anytime soon?
I don't know what's going to happen with our government, but we have to have an election by no later than the 27th of October, and more likely around the 27th of June. And so after that, we might have a different government that might be more willing to at least talk about sacrifices. Keep in mind, though, that Israelis have moved rightward. That happens when people invade your country and rape and murder and kidnap you. But it could very well be that we'd have someone other than Netanyahu in power, though, even with more of a wide spectrum within the government, and that could have an impact. And the further we get away from the war, then it'll become more palatable and socially acceptable for the Arab world to be normalizing ties with us again. And I know that it's a priority for the administration in Washington. And, as someone who's visited both Morocco and Dubai and been received really warmly over there and feeling very safe in both places, I hope that we'll get to go to more Arab and Muslim countries, though I don't really care about going to Saudi Arabia.
What can we do about Jews who buy into the disinformation about their own people? Obviously, opinions about a conflict of this magnitude can be expected to vary, but American Jews and even Jewish institutions have amplified claims of starvation, etc., that turn out to be completely fabricated. What can be done?
There are those who are lost and we won't be able to get back, who have been misinformed throughout this war. And you got to focus on the people who you can make an impact on and not the people who are lost. Focus on the young people today. Too much of my former boss at the Jerusalem Post, Brett Stevens, pointed out in his address at the 92nd Street Y, New York, that too many American Jews, their last activity in Jewish life was getting a bar mitzvah. And so then they arrive in college campuses when they're 18 and get attacked for being Jewish, not really knowing what it means and not being equipped in any way. So I think the focus needs to be on the kids continuing their education, their Jewish education, after their bar mitzvah, especially conservative Reform synagogues. Get your children to be reading pro-Israel news sources every day from the moment they turn 13 till the moment they pass their driving test or they don't get a car. And you use your leverage while you can. And so I think the young people are the key, and as opposed to some of the older people who have become misinformed and can't be won back.
Speaking of Brett Stevens, we have another Brett Stevens-related question.
I'm writing a column about Brett tonight.
What do you think of the ongoing debate about the best strategy for fighting anti-Jewish hate, e.g. the Brett Stevens versus Adam Lewis Klein and Melanie Phillips debate, where Stevens urges an inward focus on Jewish cultural identity and criticizes the ADL approach of teaching tolerance and Holocaust education to anti-Semites who are impervious to reason, and Lewis Klein, who believes that Stevens' approach is ineffective when Jewish students are threatened for the quote-unquote crime of being Zionists, and Jewish life can't function when anti-Zionism has effectively criminalized it, socially, institutionally, and increasingly legally.
I mean, Brett, without knowing it, attacked my organization as well. He said, he talked about how it might feel good to point out when the media gets things wrong, but it doesn't change them. He talked about how even though people made a big deal out of the Al-Ali Hospital incident back on the 17th of October 2023, it didn't stop the defamation from the media. But the truth is, it galvanized the people to be more vigilant in monitoring the media, and I truly believe that made the media more accountable than they were before, and that prevented the media from putting the pressure that would have harmed Israel from doing what it needs to do in this war. And that can't be underestimated. Also, at a time that people are getting their information differently, when there's less obvious objective fact, we need fact-checking more than ever. Back then, we used to all get our information from the same places. Now your Twitter feed is different than the Twitter feed of the person sitting next to you. So we need to be more careful. And so yes, he was right about the need to support Judaism thriving, but he was wrong about stopping support for the fight for Jews to be protected. I mean, unfortunately, we need more protection now, not less protection, and we need that shock value to still be there when terrible things happen, and absolutely continue supporting ADL but ensure that there's more Jewish day schools too. I'm in the have your cake and eat it too approach, if you want to add me to your philosophers over there.
Thank you. Practically speaking, what needs to happen to get Israel to withdraw from Gaza and to get Hamas to lay down their arms, and as envisioned in the U.S. brokered ceasefire agreement? And how likely is it for this to happen in the near future?
Well, we're going to see if the Americans hold accountable Hamas to give up all their weapons, because the heavy weapons are already gone. They're not firing rockets at us, thank God. But an RPG is something that could be still used if they would find some tunnel and get over the border to us or against the soldiers that are there. And Kalashnikov is very much a serious weapon, and they shouldn't be having them. And right now, it unfortunately, after the lesson from October 7th, that only we can protect ourselves, and even that we can't really count on. Having the Indonesians be protecting us and trying to disarm Hamas doesn't seem so realistic. So that's why there's pressure from Netanyahu on the Trump administration to hold Hamas accountable and make them give up power. That's the key to the rebuilding of Gaza And then when you have the rebuilding of Gaza, the reconstruction needs to be predicated on educational reconstruction. The UAE is going to be taking over Gaza. And in the Abraham Accords curriculum, the UAE changed from teaching children hate to teaching tolerance. And that has to happen in Gaza as well.
What is your sense about why the mainstream media has bought into the biased narratives that Israel is a colonial state, an apartheid state, and committing genocide?
I'm not revealing a secret to you that there are anti-Semitic people out there, and then that there used to be in the media more people were objective and not activists, and a lot of those veterans have retired and activists have taken over, and they have their biases, and they also want to be popular and go with whatever is popular, and this has unfortunately become popular, and they're going with the flow even though it's incorrect, and that's something that we can't stand for. They're also working under harder circumstances. They've got to be working a lot faster than we ever used to before. I remember when I first started in journalism, I'd go to a press conference at 10 o'clock in the morning with an 8 p.m. deadline and start writing the article at 7:15 p.m. Nowadays, you got to go to a press conference, you got to have the story up online before it ends, while you're taking pictures for Instagram and videos for TikTok and you're live tweeting the entire time. The job has gotten a lot harder, and in part because of that, and it's never made money, the more fair and objective people are letting the activists take over.
How do you and Honest Reporting deal with the very real internal disagreements within the Israeli politics, and how it affects coverage overall in the media within and outside of Israel?
I love it that we're a democracy and have differences of opinion. We don't monitor the Israeli media, and we've got plenty of media outlets that are pro-Netanyahu, anti-Netanyahu, pro-right but anti-Netanyahu, pro-left and really across the political spectrum. And that's who we are, the Jewish people. 2 Jews, 1,000 opinions, and that's how we will continue to be. Does that make us sound worse because we're not monolithic? I don't know.
Isn't the reality somewhere between the two extremes? Neither is Israel a pariah, nor has Israel been restrained enough to avoid excessive killing of civilians.
Well, I can tell you Israel tried. Israel did more than any army in the history of mankind to avoid killing civilians. It's harder than ever to do that in this war when you've got the terror tunnels underneath the civilian infrastructure, and when we're dealing with an enemy that did not care less about their own civilians being killed. Sinwar himself said very openly when he was confronted about 1,000 of his own civilians being killed, and he said, inshallah, 10,000. It's very hard when you've got the other side trying to maximize civilian deaths really on both sides of the border. So has Israel made mistakes? Has it had to prioritize its own security over how it will look abroad? That happened too much during this war, no doubt about it. And any loss of life is horrible. Unfortunately, Hamas needs to be held accountable for every loss of life on both sides in this war, because they started a war that was not to their benefit of their people, and that we did not want. So a lot goes back to intent. But unfortunately, people are still going to look at it in this stark way of one or the other.
While many in the international community and many Jews consider Israel's conquest of the West Bank and East Jerusalem in the Six-Day War to represent an occupation, many others consider those areas to be disputed territory, lawfully acquired by Israel during a defensive war. No matter the characterization, do you see any realistic chance for peace in the Middle East without the establishment of a demilitarized Palestinian state in much of those areas?
Wow. So first, let's define peace. Peace, I define as Israelis and Palestinians eating hummus together in public squares. A peace agreement is actually the opposite. It's Israelis and Palestinians eating their hummus separately, with a large security barrier in between. So, is a peace agreement still possible? That's something that would have to happen over time. October 7th certainly made it go backward. Even preventing the Abraham Accords from moving forward as it did already set it back, because we were on their way to making peace with Saudi Arabia, which would have brought along less ideological Asian and African countries into the Abraham Accords afterward, after the kosher certification from the Saudis. And then the goal was to go the other way than previously was attempted. I remember John Kerry used to say, only after Israel makes peace with the Palestinians will the Arab and Muslim world come on board. And the Abraham Accords premise is exactly the opposite. Then once the Arab and Muslim countries come on board, the Palestinians won't want to be left behind, because they'll see the economic boom that there'll be in all those Arab countries that do business with Israel. So we need to get the Abraham Accords back on track, and that will lead to there being a peace agreement with the Palestinians, which is still technically possible. Peace is something where the barriers would then come down afterward. That's a lot less realistic right now.
What ability do you have to communicate with Jewish-born majority owners of media sites, i.e. Mark Zuckerberg, and what ability do they have to remove fake posts?
I don't have that ability, but I'll tell you what's happened. Donald Trump had that ability, and I'm not praising one leader or another here. I don't give a political opinion in Israel or in America, but I'm going to give you a stated fact that there was a reason why you had the heads of the social media companies who were at the inauguration, and they paid a price for it. One of the things that happened was that Meta changed the way they have media checking, fact checking on their website. They used to have 100 different organizations around the world that did fact checking, none of which was a pro-Israel organization. And then they adopted what Twitter was doing of community notes. And what that does is it requires minority voices to be heard. And as the ultimate minority that we are, that was something very helpful. And Meta made its chief operating officer be a guy named Joel Kaplan, who was worked with AIPAC for many years. So I can't change them, but they seem to be changing in part because of the political realities that there are.
What is your take on the upcoming Israeli elections? When will they take place? Who has an edge? Can or will diaspora Jewry have any influence, and do Israelis appreciate the effect of their elections on the diaspora?
No, Israelis do not care about the impact of their politics on the diaspora, which they did. I think that the election is going to end up being somewhere in the second half of June, that at some point in March is when they'll just pass the budget, help the 6 parties that are part of the coalition or have been, and they'll get their money that they want, and then they'll go out to vote, because the election is currently set for 20 days after October 7th, and that's not a time that Netanyahu wants the election to be. And he'd much rather have it in June after you might have another visit to Israel from the president. They're going to give him prizes and everything that'll show Netanyahu looking like a leader, and he doesn't want the election to be about October 7th. He wants it to be about successes with Iran that may or may not happen over the next 24 days until the 1-month deadline wears out. And that might be something that the election would be about instead, which would help Netanyahu. But because if the election ends up being about October 7th, people think, oh, it was the the kibbutzim, the agricultural communities near Gaza that got hit, which never voted for the Likud anyway. No, but it was also Sderot and Ofakim, which are development towns in the south, where the people there got murdered left and right, and that's something that Netanyahu will be held accountable for. In northern Israel, it took a year for the people to get back, and Kiryat Shmona still looks terrible, and so these are the bases of Likud, and that could hurt Netanyahu from coming back to power.
Did the Israeli intelligence community have any advanced knowledge that October 7th was coming?
No.
If so, how can the Israeli government let that happen? And if not, how is that possible?
How could they let it happen? They didn't have any intelligence in Gaza at all because they thought that Gaza was on the way to normalize relations with Israel, that things were about to get better, and that Hamas just cared about helping its own people. They got it completely wrong. And militarily, there used to be 3 different bases that covered southern, central, and northern Gaza. And then they consolidated them into one base that got overrun by terrorists immediately in the morning, surprising the soldiers in their pajamas. They relied on a $3 billion fence that did stop anyone from entering from Gaza underground. Not one entered underground. They entered by land, air, and sea, but no one underground. But still, they went through. And they destroyed the cameras that were on the border with drones, and that had automatic machine guns on the border fence, and they hit those too. And that left them with no eyes and ears in the army. And what was their backup plan? Blimps. There were 3 blimps that monitored southern, central, and northern Gaza. All 3 blimps were down for repairs on that day. And the repairman said, "Don't worry, I'll deal with it immediately after the holidays." Well, immediately after the holidays still has not come.
What can be done to stem the violence of the settler movement on the West Bank?
There is settler violence on the West Bank. It is nowhere near violence of Arabs on Jews, and the media certainly highlights the Jew against Arab because it's kind of man bites dog when that happens. But there definitely needs to be increased police enforcement, which isn't exactly the priority of the current police minister. And I'm sure that anyone else being police minister other than Itamar Ben-Gvir would be taken more seriously. The religious Zionists in what are called settlements, that they need to do more for their own image in preventing that from happening, because it's not the mainstream. It's the fringe of the fringe, and it gives them a black name when they are the people who served beyond their numbers in the army and then sacrificed themselves for the country, and they deserve to have a better image than they're getting around the world.
We have time for a couple more questions.
Sure.
Israel's public relations during the war in Gaza seemed relatively ineffective. Why did Israel not fight the media and fight for truth in a more successful way?
Well, first of all, they weren't ready when it happened. Netanyahu, when he came back to power the last time in 2009, after Olmert was prime minister, he fired all of Olmert's people, as is normal and happens here too. And the only person he didn't fire was the foreign press spokesperson, Mark Regev. This time, when he came back to power in December of 2022, he fired everyone that Bennett and Lapid had, including the spokeswoman for the foreign press. Even though, I don't know who she votes for, she came from the army, was the ultimate professional. And when did he hire a replacement for her? October 8th. From December, when Netanyahu came back to power, to October 8th, there was no one in that role because he did not care. And then his people brought Elon Levy, who had been the spokesperson for the president, and Elon, my friend, did a very good job until someone tipped off Sarah Netanyahu that he had participated in anti-Netanyahu protests before. And then he didn't last much longer after that. He was replaced by a guy who was an army buddy of Yair Netanyahu, Netanyahu's son. And while he did not do a bad job, he got the job because of that. And it kept on going downhill from there. And I'm in the group where they have briefings. They used to be every day. There hasn't been one for a month and a half now. And so they're just not making an effort, not realizing how important that is. On the Army side, Daniel Hagari, who was the spokesperson for the IDF at the beginning of the war, totally got it. He understood why we need to be explaining ourselves better to the world to enable the success of the Army. He said it to a group of Spokesman's Unit veterans in speaking to the world, including myself in September 2023. He said, you guys are the hourglass that give us the time to do what we needed to do. But he got replaced eventually too, and his replacement does not get it. And they're not even releasing numbers. Numbers that'll make us look good about combatant and civilian casualties in the war. We've been pressuring them for them to release those numbers because it'll make us look good. They're not ready yet. And letting ordinary journalists into Gaza independently, the Supreme Court is trying to force them. The Army's doing everything possible to not let that happen, and I think they're making a mistake.
And I'm sorry we can't get to every question, but our last question, who is the most interesting person you got to interview and why?
I mean, I interviewed the President of the United States when he interfered in Israeli politics a while back, and that was pretty interesting. And he's a different interviewee. Netanyahu is the hardest person to interview because you ask him any question, he'll talk about something completely different. He doesn't care what he's asked. He talks about what he wants to say, and that makes it a little harder. And one time I met with Netanyahu the day after the Phillies had won the World Series. And Netanyahu was raised in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. And I said, Bibi, Mazel Tov on the Phillies winning the World Series. And he said something about Iran. So it was a pleasure talking to you tonight. If you have any questions, I'm Gil at HonestReporting.com. Please follow us at action@HonestReporting.com. And off I go to Milwaukee. Thank you very much.